I'm going to tell you a little bit about Theresa before we get started. She is a MSW and a licensed clinical social worker at the VA Caregiver Support Program Manager for the Birmingham VA healthcare system. You know, I didn't know you had all that I didn't know you had a social work degree, Theresa. That's exciting. I'm actually working on my master's as well.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. So she joined the healthcare system in 2007 and has served in various areas to include primary care, inpatient care, home-based primary care, and contract nursing homes. In February 2011, she was chosen to implement the VA Caregiver Program. Since the inception of the VA Caregiver Program, Theresa has worked to grow and develop the program at a local level and has also served on 2 national caregiver support committees and intermittently served as the caregiver support lead for the VA Integrated Service Network in the absence of a full-time lead. So Theresa, you sound like you've got your hands deep in this caregiving game. And so I appreciate you coming to tell our lovely caregivers about the resources the VA can provide. And hopefully by the end of this, everyone feels confident if they can access these resources to be able to do so. So without further ado, Theresa, I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on to you. And if you guys have any questions do you want to just put it in the chat, or do you want them to speak during? What was your preference?
They can stop me. I think it's pretty informal. I don't think that as long as seems like a kind of solid participant, I don't think it's an overwhelming number to where it might detract. I think we can do it informally, and you can stop me and ask questions while it's going. And or if you want to hold your questions till the end, I always take questions at the end, but if you want to stop me along the way, that is perfectly fine.
Good to know. Awesome. Well, without further ado, Theresa, take it away.
All right. Well, good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here. And it was a great intro, but I do very much recognize, as much as I've served in this caregiver position and worked with caregivers, I always recognize and impressed with the caregivers themselves, because you all are really the experts, and I'm constantly learning from caregivers. So my role, while I've been here, over 10 years now, it definitely still look for the caregivers to be that expert. So really appreciate you all having me, and would like to go over and kind of go an overview of our VA Caregiver Support Program. So I'll have you go to the next slide. So in an official sense, the VA has really taken notice of the importance of caregivers. So they're really an important part of all healthcare structures now. And you can see our VA mission statement. It used to just be for veterans. It actually includes family and caregivers and survivors in it. So really looking at the whole picture of healthcare and really that vital role caregivers play. And along with that, so we changed our overall mission statement. We have a VA Caregiver Support mission statement. And we're going to be breaking that down a little bit more. Some of the 4 things we really try to focus on and what we build the program around are education, resources, support, and services. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we try to support those 4 mission statements within the VA Caregiver Support. Next slide. And so this is just the way we frame the supports we offer in the following categories. So going to kind of go further into each one of these to make sure this is how we try to support our caregivers in an overall frame. Next slide. These are our skills hands-on trainings, and we actually have not implemented the CPR for local Birmingham. This is something that we would be moving to in the future. We do have a wonderful toolkit and do a lot of support with suicide prevention. And that is actually available online. If you're interested in any of that, it's a really thorough put together training guide. And we do a lot of trainings on what we call SAVE. And it stands for the Suicide Prevention acronym that we use to really make sure we're supporting those caregivers that have someone that may be dealing with suicidal ideations. So these are some of those hands-on skills trainings that we'll provide. Next slide. So here are our mobile supports, and we recognize many caregivers have a difficult time leaving the home. So we want to make sure we have different avenues for caregivers to get supports and really get that socialization without having to necessarily go anywhere. The Better Building Caregivers is an online support group, so you can log on at any time And we partner with Stanford University actually came up with the online support program, but really great support for any caregiver that has difficulty leaving the home, or maybe their only option is really to log on late night or early morning. Great way to support caregivers. We have a text program, just intermittently sends you text, and it also is broken down to where it can be for diagnosis specific. So we have one that's for dementia, one that's for Parkinson's, and they kind of send you tips and different texts throughout the week to really support you as a caregiver. So a lot of these are just really focused on trying to make sure we're giving support, and that sense of isolation when you're so wrapped up in just the responsibility of caregiving can be reduced. And then last but certainly not least, and I'll be referencing this throughout the call today, and really it's a great resource, is our website. The only thing I can say negatively about it, it's kind of a wealth of information, and it can be a little bit hard to navigate because there's so much on there, but it really has a lot of information on there. For any questions, everything that I will review today will be on that website. So really great resource there. Next slide. Okay. And so with the VA, really taking a big focus on whole health here. And so that's really just looking at what matters to the caregiver, instead of, we used to take a perspective of what was it that, instead of not what is wrong with you or what's the problem, it's what matters to you, and trying to make that the focus, not focusing on the problem. And that really encompasses the whole caregiver, and looking at, their social supports, what are their interests, what are their hobbies, what are their goals, and trying to build it around their goals and supports. Just a different perspective, and we try to have different supports to be able to build around that whole health plan. Okay, and next slide. So our reach is one of those supports. We have and in the previous slide, we also had our individual reach coaching. We also have a group support, and this is just targets any kind of, if it's a behavioral problem, if it's a challenge, we do individual coaching, and it's evidence-based. It's really well done. We do training for it, so we can reach out, and there, some of the reach supports are, diagnosis specific. So we have specific reach for dementia, Parkinson's, ALS, spinal cord, and then we also have just a general reach, and they're all coaching, and they come with a lot of resources to really support if it's a diagnosis, if it's a specific problem, if you're working with someone with dementia and their problem is, the biggest challenge is a bath every day. The whole individual coaching will be setting up goals, getting support, ways to help you with, that targeted behavior that you're wanting to see a change in. We also have additional group supports, Caregivers First. We do a lot of these virtual to just make sure we're also reaching out to any caregiver that can't come in, and trying to offer more in person at this point. And then we have our own whole health coaching, again, focusing on that whole health approach, where we'll do individual coaching and really work with any caregiver to make sure any kind of goals they're having, that we try to support it and make sure those goals for them are met. And I believe that's everything for this. Next slide. And peer support. So kind of to piggyback on where I started, there's some things that only someone who's been in the role can really talk to you about, and really give you that sense of support. And so the VA recognizes that, and how important it is to have someone that's been through a similar journey and can understand. So we have a process where we formally enroll caregivers to go through a training and be a mentor. And for any caregiver that's going through the caregiver process and is enrolled with us, if they would like to have a peer support mentor to be in contact, to reduce that sense of isolation, they'll be in regular contact, and kind of also do, through their own training, be another source of support. That's another caregiver that will be able to support them as well. Next slide. And so we also have resource fairs, and Alabama Respite Coalition has been Lifespan has been a big support for us when we have these. And so if you would check with Jenny, I know we normally do these during November. That is our National Family Caregiver Month. And we try to break them up and do them in a little bit of different areas. This year we did one in Birmingham and one in Huntsville, but we'll try to have our different community providers and also just a lot of our resources out there. A lot of our own VA resources come to these. So Jenny's great about posting those. And if you keep up with her when we have those, typically in November, please feel free to come out and see those, and just really trying to make sure we're at a different resource fairs and providing that information so people are aware of all the resources the VA is offering for caregivers. Next slide. Respite, and probably everybody on this call, since this is through Alabama Respite, is familiar with the need for respite, but it's something that the VA is really focusing on and making sure that, and it's different for everybody. It's making sure that person gets a break, whether that break is formally trying to set someone up, or just, interaction or getting to do something they like, just making sure they take a break, really focusing on the importance of it for caregivers, and how that, not getting respite can really affect someone, and just really supporting that, trying to make sure that respite goal, again, as I mentioned before, with whole health, is focused on what that caregiver needs and not necessarily us telling them what their respite is. Okay, next slide. So our caregiver support line, and this is a 1-800 number, and it's staffed not locally, but we get any referral that comes in for our area. And so if you had someone that was in a different area that you knew was caring for a veteran, you could give them this line, and it'll automatically connect them with that VA that is closest to them. And we will follow up with them. They'll also do their own counseling and provide some resources there too. But sometimes it's just easier. It's fully staffed. They will not locally here. We're trying to keep up with calls in a 72-hour time frame, and we try to, make that quicker. But this is just a call line that's set up so anyone can call and get some information. Hopefully getting all those answered very quickly and getting a referral to the correct medical center. Next slide. And so the caregiver support line also does a monthly call, and this offers education on different topics. It does everything from money management, burnout, and then it'll do specific diagnoses. And so any caregiver, they offer at different times throughout the month the same call, and any caregiver can call in and just get some education. Next slide. And so how do you access these services? So there's two ways, two different programs we have. We have a general caregiver support program, and this is the first one I'm going to talk about. It's open to anyone, and next slide we'll kind of go over the criteria for it. And I say open to anyone. The veteran must be enrolled in the VA. That's kind of the criteria for getting any services with the VA. So the veteran has to be enrolled in the VA healthcare side of things. The veteran has to need some type of assistance and agree to have the caregiver on there. But that's all you need to go ahead and get into our general caregiver support services, and you'd be eligible for all the services and supports we just discussed. Next slide. Okay. And these are just the overview of kind of what I had broken down before. And these are all the things we would screen for and get you enrolled in if you're a caregiver for a veteran, and making sure we're linking you with those, and kind of talked about those in more detail before we got into the program. Next slide. How you get enrolled, just contact us and we will get you enrolled. If you're not enrolled in the VA healthcare system, we can help to see if you're eligible, if the veteran is eligible, and go through that process just to make sure. And then if you are eligible and you're enrolled in the VA, it's a very quick process, can be done that day, and get you enrolled and start setting up and doing referrals and supports for you. Okay, next slide. So the other program we have is our Comprehensive Assistance for Family Caregivers, and this offers the same supports and also has an enhanced benefit with it too. Next slide. Now this one has a set of criteria, pretty extensive, 7 different criteria, and it requires an application. It requires the veteran to be at least what they call 70% service connected, and we go through a set of assessments. And we do not make a local determination on eligibility, but we go through quite a few assessments, and then it is sent off to a network who reviews our assessments and does an initial approval. There's more assessments, and then there's a final approval. Next slide. So these are some of those enhanced benefits. So if it goes through these processes and steps and they are found to meet eligibility for this comprehensive program, then there is a stipend involved. There's enhanced respite benefits, possibility of health insurance for the caregiver, and special referrals to legal and financial planning, which we contract with. So they'll do wills and different advanced directives, different things like that for the caregivers. Next slide. And I kind of touched on this, but it is a 10-point application process. These are the 10 steps. It can take up to 90 days. We typically get it done before 90 days, but it is a 90-day process. Next slide. This is just the contacted every CS, online, there's a caregiver resources, and we will link you with all the resources at every medical center to get you connected to any of these and see if we can get you supports as a caregiver for a veteran. Next slide. And this just ends with our website and that national line. And I'm just going to open it up for any questions. It's a lot of information. And hopefully I've covered everything in a general sense. And we'll just take any questions at this point.
All right, so I'll go ahead and stop sharing here. So if anybody, let me take these off. Sorry, it's my little over glasses for my blue light.
I like them.
Thank you so much, Theresa, for giving us that overview. Is there anybody on the call that has any questions? Feel free to unmute or type it into the chat here. Well, while everyone's collecting their thoughts, I'll tell you right now, Theresa, I had no idea that your caregiver resources were so extensive. I think that's really awesome. There's a lot of, it sounds like there's been a lot of thought put into the creation of these resources, and I appreciate that, definitely.
Good, yeah. Definitely check out that website, and there's videos on the website. I may not have mentioned that. I know there's a lot of videos out there, but videos on transfers, appropriate transfers, and videos for dementia caregiving. There's a lot of different resources on there for diagnosis specific, medication logs you can print out, just a lot of information on our website with resources. And then, yes, they're really trying to make sure it's a leading kind of support when they're coming up with ideas for these for caregivers. So, yeah.
So on that note, for those of us on the call who maybe are not eligible for VA specific stuff, it sounds like there's still a wealth of information available on the website for caregivers, whether they're veterans or not.
Absolutely. So yes, I would definitely check that out. And if you know a veteran, they can, definitely let them know. They can call that caregiver support line. But yes, so anyone can go on that website and kind of use some of the resources that are on there. Like I was mentioning, there's videos that you might find helpful. There's logs, there's the respite sheets and things like that aren't necessarily specific. Anyone can use a lot of that information. If you want to print any of those different tips, caregiver tips, all of that is anyone can use. Doesn't have to be, and it's a very well done website. So and take your time because there's a lot on there. That's the only thing I will say is sometimes it's so much information. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely be picking through it for sure, getting some inspiration.
Great. Yeah, and they're constantly updating it too. So
good.
Yeah, from time to time, check it out and see.
So does anybody have any questions for Theresa or any comments? Well, thank you again, Theresa, for coming, taking your time to share this information. Like I said, I had no idea there's so much going on in your world, and so I appreciate the invitation into it. And if anybody has any questions for Theresa that they maybe, pops in their head later, could you perhaps put your contact info in the chat, Theresa, in case anybody wanted to, or I can put it in there for them, in case anybody wanted to email you or whatnot.
Okay.
And speaking of the chat, while Theresa does that, if anybody has yet to do so, please put your email in the chat. Some of you guys came in a little late and missed my preamble, so just a gentle reminder, put your email in the chat so I can do that post survey and get that feedback. Awesome, thank you. Thank you.
And I didn't put my title with it, but I just put my email and my that main phone number. Let me also put my title, my name, my email, so that may, but yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of resources available. I encourage everyone to check out the website, whether you're caring for a veteran or you yourself are a veteran. That's a good question. Let me ask you this, Theresa. Do the if a caregiver were to get onto your program, but say they are a veteran themselves, but the one they're caring for is not, are they still available for any of those programs or supports?
It's a good question. Unfortunately, our whole program, one of the sides of government is like very is set by regulations. So we can't technically enroll a veteran that is providing care for a non-veteran. Okay. It has to be a veteran receiving the care. However, we would definitely link them. You know, one of the resources we may link them with would be you. So, you know, we would definitely be reaching out and giving them as much information we have as all our community partners, and trying to give them, you know, some information, but we would not be able to enroll them in one of those two programs to formally do services with that veteran.
Okay. So not 100%, but you won't leave them hanging, right?
Right.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. Well, if everyone is satisfied, everyone's had a chance to ask questions or at least think about questions. We've got Theresa's contact info in the chat. Short and sweet today. I appreciate that. So thank you so much for joining us again, Theresa. I look forward to working with you in the future with the VA Caregiver Summit coming up in July or in August, right? Yeah. July. Girl, thank goodness for Google Calendar.
I agree. Yeah.
Because this sucker in between my ears is worn out. So I appreciate that. But yes, I encourage everyone to go on the website, whether you are a veteran or taking care of a veteran or not. It seems to be a very well-researched caregiver supports and information, regardless of your status. So if there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and end for the day. Thank you all for joining us. And you all enjoy the sunshine. Try not to get burnt up. Drink your water and clench your jaw. Take your naps. And we'll see y'all next week. All right?
Thanks so much, Jenny.
Of course. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.